A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Today, on the 14th day of September in the year 2020, the Black Management Forum Student Chapter and the Young Professionals presents a thought-provoking webinar under the theme Changing the Leadership Terrane Through Bold Thinking. Now, the youth leadership in the country is passionate about changing the landscape in the country, and how ushering the much needed change. The webinar seeks to uncover the kind of youth leadership that is needed in this very interesting time, and also how youth leadership can leverage on technological advancement to drive transformation in the country. Today's webinar seeks to engage on the very much wise minds of the great Mr. Mpho Dakada, and together in the minds of the great Mr. Monde Ndlovu. Now, you would note that as we engage these two speakers, talking to Mr. Dakada would be as if you are talking to Mr. Tom Dakada. And then talking to Mr. Monde Ndlovu would be as if you are talking to the late Lord Ndlovu. These are great minds. And we are presented with a great opportunity because Mr. Ndlovu is here with us. We would then pick into the mentality and the mind of the past president of the BMF, who in him possesses the BMF DNA. So today, we're going to unfold ways in order to address the fourth industrial revolution in the country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with those opening remarks, allow me to give to you and to present to you the Black Management Forum Provincial Chairperson in the Limpopo province, Mr. Mpho Motsei, who is, amongst others, going to warmly welcome everybody who has joined us this evening. Mr. Motsei, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Legala, for this opportunity. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's event. On my welcome remarks, allow me to recognize and share the realities that as the world enters the fourth industrial revolution or artificial intelligence, robotic and internet things, the challenges for Africa is providing its youth with the knowledge and skills needed for the emerging world of work. I will also borrow from the words of Dr. K.Y. Amok, who said, there is no way to predict the future with any level of certainty, but the answer to the challenges and the problems we face will remain as it always has in our collective hands. It is against this thing that the strives to empower and the broader society through information. This evening is no different. We have invited the movers and shakers in the industry to come and share with us how we can change the leadership terrain through bold thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to extend my warm welcome to our speaker, Mr. Monde Ndlovu and Mr. Mpho Dakada. We are looking forward to listening to what you have prepared for us. You will facilitate the proceeding well, and I therefore extend my greetings to you and Mr. David Matsie, who will thank our guest and audience at the end. Can you please listen to these guys and learn as I welcome everybody else who has taken their time in their busy schedule to be part of this particular event. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Motsei. Now, you would note, as a constituent or as a member of the Black Management Forum, that whatever we as the Black Management Forum people set our minds on, we do it well. Now, the speaker that I'm going to present to you is a speaker of such a unique nature that it will be worth your while, everybody who's here, to listen attentively to what he has got in store for us. Now, allow me to quickly go through his biography so that I, in a way, share light on the kind or on the caliber of speaker that we as the BMF in the Limpopo province are presenting to you tonight. Mr. Mpho Dagada, by profession, is a best-selling author, global keynote speaker, obsessive entrepreneur and investor. By nature, he's a solution architect, a passionate conveyor, and has been caught on multiple occasions attempting to shift mindsets. By circumstance, he's a digital currency mogul, a digital visionary, blockchain technology, and expert and futurist. Mr. Dagada was officially appointed to be a member of the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And amongst many of Mr. Dagada's undertakings, he has his best foot forward with his consignment in order to ensure that he positions South Africa as a globally competitive player in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The world is moving and growing, and Mpho has a clear understanding of the direction that it will be taking. At the age of 25 years old, he has an arsenal of accolades and is proving that no task is big for him. Now as the BMF, we take wisdom from the South African government, which has started the process of appreciating the need for addressing the future by appointing the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, a commission that our next speaker forms part of. And this is in the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. South Africa needs to invest in research and investment in new skills that will assist in strengthening the developing future leaders. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to spoil you with great thought, great visionary, and great minds by calling onto the podium none other but Mr. Mpho Dagada. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the leadership of the BMF in Limpopo. Thank you so much for arranging and creating this thought-provoking topic and platform for tonight. And I'd like to also send my greetings to all the prestigious members of the BMF. Good evening, I greet you all. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've got a brief presentation that I'd like to share. So just trying to see if I can share my screen. Everybody can see my screen. Kindly just type on the chat box clear, just so I know that my screen is visible, that I'm not the only one seeing my screen. So if you are able to see my screen, please type in the chat box clear, just so I know that my screen is visible. Thank you so much. I see all the clear messages. So tonight, it's all about the Fourth Industrial Revolution and actually paving our way as South Africans, which is quite important. Now, one very important thing that I want to start off by highlighting is that when South Africa started off to set up the Fourth Industrial Revolution Presidential Commission, we were already too late. And the reason I say this very honestly, very brutally, to say that the world had already begun with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. When we actually started the Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission, we actually realized, sorry about that, we actually realized that this commission was actually set up in a time where we should have already done this already, and it was not already done. Now, our mandate as a commission is very clear, and that's to position the South Africa as a global competitive key player when it comes to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Our task is to coordinate, to monitor and evaluate the strategies that we put up, and the strategy has to be multi-sectoral and also make sure that it's implemented across all spheres in the country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the Fourth Industrial Revolution, we're looking at something for South Africa that's quite new. And I say quite new, so I'm just struggling a bit here with getting my, all right, cool. Now, we say quite new because when we look at the number of fixed broadband subscriptions in South Africa, which falls under obviously the Third Industrial Revolution, the chart you see clearly depicts for you that we're quite behind as compared to the world when it comes to internet. So a lot of people expected, a lot of people were saying, why not first focus on getting internet to the people instead of jumping ahead and looking at this lofty task of a fourth industrial revolution? And what we did and what we quickly realized, and I'm going to share more about it as I continue the presentation, is that we simply cannot afford to only look at the third industrial revolution. We needed to forge ahead and look at the fourth industrial revolution. And in the meantime, also fast-pace the third industrial revolution, which brought us the internet in Africa. Now, when you look at specific dynamics of Africa, you quickly realize, and especially in this chart, you quickly realize that in South Africa and also in Africa, the number of mobile cellular subscriptions per 100 people has been increasing at a faster rate than the rest of the world. And as everybody knows, in Africa, it's quite known, a lot of people would sort of label us or call us the continent with the most mobile subscriptions available to electronic money. That we are known to have a lot of people that have got a lot of cell phone subscriptions in the country. And this is very clear through this graph that as though we don't have broadband, as though our fiber is not as well versed as the rest of the world, we do have mobile subscription, which is quite different, which is a bit of a betwixt too, because here you have a country which doesn't quite have strong broadband statistics, but it's very strong mobile subscription statistics, which puts us in a very agile but very vulnerable place as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we started this task, we looked at other countries to see what are other countries doing when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution. One of the countries which I really liked was Germany. Germany said that their aim is to drive a decentralized digital manufacturing. They decided as a country that will be their focus. They said that the emphasis will be superior and efficient manufacturing. They wanted to actually have the best manufacturing processes in the world. And as you see this, you realize this is a country that's ready to compete with China and that's ready not to lose their edge when it comes to manufacturing. Those of you who know much about manufacturing would know that there's a lingo that's called the German machine when we speak about vehicles, because obviously they're manufactured in Germany. So they wanted to actually take the manufacturing to a new level. Their interest specifically, or rather their strategy, before I get to that, was advancing Germany as a global innovation leader. They want Germany to become innovative in their manufacturing. And one of the interesting things that I really found interesting about these strategies is that Germany has actually got a strategy where they're actually working on individualized medicine. And this is medicine that's specifically individualized to you as the individual. So they would study where you were born, the region you were born, the temperatures in that region, the type of food you've been eating in the region where you were born, the type of genetics that your family's had before, the type of exposure that you've been exposed to in terms of bacteria in that region, whatever's ruling in that region, etc. So they wanted to actually create medicine that will be very specific to the population that currently lives in those specific areas. And the reason they did this is because they realized that they actually don't have many youth in that country, that many of the population is an aging population. And they wanted to use technology in the fourth industrial revolution to create individualized medicine to ensure that their population is living longer and able to produce for them better. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after looking at many different countries and realizing what their strategy is, what their aim is, what their goal is, it became quite imperative for South Africa to actually carve up a fourth industrial revolution strategy that will actually meet and suit the needs of our country. I apologize. I don't know why my machine is not. We've got more specific things we need to look at. This is our weaknesses, and every country wants to strengthen your weaknesses. Weakness is global competitiveness. Through our pricing structures, our economic structure, challenges are not globally competitive. That's one target that we wanted the revolution to come ahead and fix for us.
Mr. Dagada? Mr. Dagada, sir.
I think Mr. Dagada has got connection problems. But while he's still trying to reconnect, I'd urge whoever's got questions to, in our chatter box, to pose their questions so that as soon as Mr. Dagada is done presenting his presentation, we could engage him for a couple of minutes, because I'm made aware that as soon as he presents, after that, he needs to get to his second meeting. So if you could just share your questions in the chatter box, we'll just pick a few, if time still allows, and engage him. And then we'll then go on to the next speaker, who will always obviously be here with us. Chairperson, I don't know if maybe Mr. Dagara is communicating with you regarding his connection.
No. Let me just find out from him how far is he and whether he's winning from his side. And then I'll come back to you. But for now, I think we need to be proactive enough.
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that.
All right, he's back. All right, Mr. Dagara, you may proceed.
All right. Thank you. Sorry for that. I am in a hotel room and I don't know what's going on with the network. I believe I was on this slide. I'd be corrected if I was wrong. Right. Are you still with me, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, correct, Mr. Dagara.
Okay, excellent. So I was in the process of describing the South African economy and explaining what our weaknesses are in the South African economy and what we would need to work on as an economy. Now, one of our weaknesses is global competitiveness. I've already described it. The ease of doing business in South Africa. Inequality being a very big one, and one that many people in South Africa have overemphasized the need of addressing this one, and the high unemployment rates. So this is what we're set to coordinate a strategy that will actually speak to these sectors and speak to these specific weaknesses within our country. Now, one very important thing to note is that it took South Africa 60 years for us to first participate in the first industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution showed us technologies like the steam engine that actually came through, but it only took us 60 years for us to get the first steam engine to actually land in Africa, and which was South Africa. Now, with the second industrial revolution, which brought us many technologies, but one of the most distinctive technologies of the second industrial revolution was the aeroplane. It took us over 60 years for the first aeroplane to actually land in South Africa and in Africa. Now, when it comes to the internet, which is the third one, it took the internet 7 years for it to actually get to South Africa after it having launched in America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you quickly realize through these statistics that the actual problem that we've always had as Africans is that we've always been late to industrial revolutions. And as a result of that, we've always been late to actually creating wealth within that specific industrial revolution. We're all aware that America enjoys the benefits of the third industrial revolution most because they were one of the first to actually take advantage of the internet, which gave us most or the majority of the third industrial revolution technologies. Now, one thing we realize as Africans is that we cannot be very passive about our thinking. We need to actually be bold and forge ahead from the standpoint which you're currently in, to ensure that we're able to participate in the fourth industrial revolution. Gone are the days where we look at ourselves as those that still need to fix problems or issues of the third industrial revolution, but we need to see ourselves as a key player in the fourth industrial revolution. And that's done through bold thinking and innovative thinking within ourselves, within our organizations, and within the communities that we live. Because we realized that it actually took more than just the government to build up the United States of America to actually enjoy the benefits of the third industrial revolution. It was actually work that was done through the community. When we actually did research to actually look at what caused America to boom in the third industrial revolution, which brought us the internet, we actually realized that it was specific things like meetups that were actually cultural in cities like Silicon Valley, where people would meet up and share ideas about how they can actually evolve and better the technological systems that were there. And these were sort of the interesting insights that actually showed us that for any revolution to take place, you actually need collaboration to actually take place. And that's one area, whereas in Africa and in South Africa, collaboration is not as strong as it should be. And that collaboration happens through communities. So for example, in Silicon Valley, it was reported that on a single day, in one city, there are over 500 meetups just to discuss technology. Over 500 people are meeting, be it in restaurants, in bars, in lecture halls, on a single day to discuss a single topic, which is the third industrial revolution, the internet. How they can actually create apps and systems on the internet that will actually benefit them. Now, when we look at Africa and when we look at South Africa and try and find how many of these do we actually have, we actually realize that's an area where we lack very much on. Now, when we're forging the strategy for South Africa to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution, we needed to look at our strengths. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me just to quickly rush through because we don't have that much time, but I'd love to get as much information across as possible. We needed to look at what are our strengths? What can we start working on that we're actually strong on currently? And we've got three key strengths. The first one is the natural resources. We all know as Africa and South Africa, we're a hub and we actually have a great reserve of many natural resources. One of the greatest reserves of the natural resources that we've got in South Africa is platinum as well as chromium. These are resources which we have in abundance in ourselves in this country. And one thing that we realize that these resources on a daily basis are shipped out to China to actually create final products and bring it back and sell it to us. We all know that narrative. And this is where we need bold thinking to change and solve that narrative. It was in a government symposium where we were all discussing a simple thing like the making of tinned tomatoes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not know this, ZZ2 in South Africa obviously is one of the largest producers of tomatoes that we have. And they ship out tomatoes to China, and all that happens to those tomatoes is they put in a tin and they ship back to us. Now, the conversation around that symposium was to say, such a simple thing as tinned tomatoes, we need to actually import. Why is it that after so many years of us having our freedom, so many years of us having the IDC, having all government institutional funding agencies, having many international investors all around the world, why is it that a simple thing like tinned tomatoes is something that we actually still import? Ladies and gentlemen, these were some of the questions which you realize that we need to actually enhance. We need to actually forge ahead. We need to be forceful and aggressive about utilizing our skills, our resources within the country. The second strength that we actually have is the fact that we're a continental economic and political powerhouse. South Africa as a country actually enjoys very, very important, very strong economic and political power within Africa. We're actually chairing the African Union at the moment. So this is one strength that we could actually use to actually forge ahead and form partnerships with other countries in Africa, form collaborations to make sure that we're all benefiting as much as we possibly can within the fourth industrial revolution. And lastly, a mature financial services sector. The fact that our financial services sectors, our banking sectors, as well as our banking institutions in South Africa have won many awards and been recognized for being very mature and very strong within that. And these are strengths that if we forge together for the fourth industrial revolution, we're able to use them and actually forge ahead in creating that. And I'm sure as I explain these strengths, and I could already see in the chat box that a few people have already started writing down a few questions and a few ideas, that if we are to forge and use these together, and I'm sure many of you are already thinking of ideas, we're able to make the fourth industrial revolution an actual possibility in Africa. And not only a possibility, but we're also able to make Africa as a powerhouse and leader for the fourth industrial revolution. Because what we realize that in many of these things, much of the resources that are needed, much of the resources that are needed to build robots, that are needed to actually run these machines that we keep speaking about, quantum computing, all these things, batteries, they all lie within Africa. Very interesting story about batteries. So the majority of the world currently is all looking for batteries. And all the resources needed for batteries all lie within Africa. Yet we're not knowing of many companies in Africa that are looking at actually creating batteries. And this is where we need to come in with innovative thinking, with bold thinking from young people to say enough is enough. We need to actually use these resources that we have to make sure that we're actually doing these things in Africa and in South Africa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to quote I realize that I've run out of time here, but just to quote Mr. Klaas, who's the founder of the World Economic Forum. And he said something quite significant and quite important. He said, I'm convinced that one thing, that in the future, talent, more than capital, will represent the critical factor of production. And many a times in Africa, and many a times in South Africa, the cry has always been, but where do we get the capital? Where do we get the funding to do these things? Where do we get the money to do these things? But one very critical thought that he demonstrates here is that in the fourth industrial revolution, or in this new world that we're coming into, that we're currently living in right now, talent is more important than funding. And as we look at the billionaire list that's actually entering, we realize one new billionaire that's actually entered, and that's the founder or creator of Zoom. Ladies and gentlemen, the capital needed to create Zoom is actually not that much. The capital in Zoom was more about it being developed for enterprise users, but the creation of the platform actually did not cost much. I actually went ahead and spoke to one South African engineer, software engineer, to ask him, how much would it cost to create a Zoom system? And the number he gave me, I wouldn't want to share it because obviously I'd only want to share verified information with you. But the number he gave me was very staggering. And that's to emphasize and to realize that in the fourth industrial revolution, it's more about the talent. And what we mean about the talent, we're talking about the bold thinking, the way of thinking, than it is about capital. And this gives Africa and South Africa a chance for us to actually participate, and not only participate, but have a chance to dominate in the fourth industrial revolution. So that's where it's very, very important. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to apologize. I've run out of time. There was much more information that I wanted to share with you, but I'd like to take an opportunity to take some questions before I have to head off to another meeting. So over to you, Program Director, if you could just facilitate the process of a few questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Dagada. Well, the dramatic change of speed and scales brought about the fourth industrial revolution has put pressure on the South African government, society, and businesses. Well, some say that the pressure can create a positive impact, while some say otherwise. I see Senior Counsel Advocate Shikwambana posed a question, and he's asking, how could the mindset of people hold back the fourth industrial revolutions in the country? While at the same time, Mr. Papama Ngandi poses a question, and he questions and says, Silicon Valley was built by the entrepreneurial state. Now, has there been interest in the Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission to leverage the creative economy and its enhancing potential? I think that those are the questions that would allow you to answer, Mr. Dagada.
All right, thank you so much for that opportunity. So I'll start with Advocate Shikwambana. Shikwambana, sorry. Apologies about that. I think we need to be very honest about the fact that we do have a mindset problem when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution in South Africa and in Africa. A lot of people, when the fourth industrial revolution commission was set, there were a lot of people that were against it. A lot of people came out to say, you know what, let's rather focus on the third industrial revolution. We stand no chance when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution. A lot of people felt that it was too lofty of a dream. A lot of people felt that it was too difficult for us to accomplish. A lot of people felt that we needed to fix the basics first before we went for such a lofty thing. And to some extent, it's very understandable where people are coming from. But at the same time, we cannot forget that there are entrepreneurs that actually grew up in this country, like Elon Musk, that are now leading within this industry. But not only him, but many more other entrepreneurs that come out of Africa and leave to other countries because they believe that the South African government and the people in Africa are not quite apt to this fourth industrial revolution. So it would be doing an injustice to the great minds that we have in the African continent to allow them to actually leave and go ahead and create, you know, amazing things outside of Africa. So I believe that the mindset shift starts with us thinking boldly, us engaging boldly, us making sure that wherever we are, wherever in what we're doing in our organizations and our companies, we're making sure that the fourth industrial revolution is not seen as this terrible thing that's coming to take off jobs, but it's seen as something that we need to engage with ourselves. We need to forge ahead and actually embrace, fight it within ourselves, and include it in our systems as many times as we can possibly get people to become comfortable with it. Now, with the question that was asked by Papama, I believe that it's a very good question that many people usually ask to say, when we look at the third industrial revolution in America, was it not actually created by the entrepreneurs? Yes, it was created by the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. But one very important thing which many people are not aware of is that the government of America has given these technological companies, one, many a times incentives, but also funding in many different ways. And that's one thing that we quickly realize that we lack in Africa, that many of the people that look into fourth industrial revolutions, the applications as well as the plans and the presentations often land upon the minds of those that have not quite studied what the future looks like. And hence they lack out in the opportunity of them actually creating or getting funding or actually doing these bold, big plans of forging ahead into the future. And this is one thing that we needed to fix in government, to make sure that the government is not the one holding the people back or the citizens back on creating this fourth industrial revolution, which is quite important. Program Director, I don't know if we can,
Yes.
if we've got time to take the other two questions.
All right. Just two more questions. One from Mr. Ishmael Sello. Then after his question, we'll then move to the provincial chairperson, Mr. Mudze, who will pose his question, and then that will be it. Now, Mr. Ishmael Sello is brilliantly emphasizing on the question of whether South Africa will ever be ready for the fourth industrial revolution. I see you repeated the question twice, that it only becomes fair for you to engage him on that, Mr. Dakata.
Thank you very much. I think the truth of the matter is that the fourth industrial revolution in itself is not quite something that we get ready for. The fourth industrial revolution is something that we engage as it happens. So I think a lot of times people sort of felt that they'll be given time or a warning to start preparing for the fourth industrial revolution. And many of us have just noticed through coronavirus that it's all upon us. We have to sort of engage it. So it's something that we actually engaging with on a daily basis. I believe the more pertinent question to ask, and perhaps the question Mr. Silo is trying to raise here, is, will we be able to profit from the fourth industrial revolution? And that's the bigger question that we need to ask, because ladies and gentlemen, as much as we might all not be aware of it, we are already engaging with the fourth industrial revolution. I'll give you an example. Vodacom uses an artificial intelligence robot to determine how to market to you. So when you're buying airtime and you see that little pop-up that says, would you not want to buy an extra 1 gig for WhatsApp or an extra whatever for whatever the case is that they're marketing, they are already using artificial intelligence in your marketing that's actually designed and created to speak to you specifically. So the fourth industrial revolution is already here. It's more about how do we get the people in Africa to position themselves to profit, make money, and take advantage of it in the fourth industrial revolution. And that's where I believe we kind of lack. And that's why we need to focus more on, to say, how do we push out finished products that people will use in the fourth industrial revolution? Instead of us just creating steel out of our iron and our chrome that we have in Africa, how do we create a robot? Instead of us just looking at creating a hub where we have in East London where we boast that we create cars out of it, how do we create smart cars, that self-driving cars? And that's where we sort of need to sort of be playing, to say, we need to get ourselves to become profitable in the fourth industrial revolution. And I'll be very honest in saying, I believe we're currently lacking on that. And that's where we need to work much harder on. Program Director?
Yes, I think Nicholas is, it should be, but let me just ask you this question, because I know that you have limited time. I'm just going to ask you a very personal question, which is on your bio. I've realized that you're saying you've made your first million when you were at age 21. Would you be able to assist us and help us to, how did you get it to you being able to make a first million at the age of 21? Because for some of us, we're still struggling even now to make a first million.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think it's a relevant question. And I always emphasize the fact that one thing that I've quickly realized, and this is something that I've realized from a very young age, is that those that engage the fourth industrial revolution tend to profit much more, because they're using things that those that are not aware of the fourth industrial revolution are not using. So for example, one cannot quite compete with artificial intelligence when it comes to making money. And those that use it will obviously benefit more and become more profitable from it than those that don't. But back to how I actually became a millionaire at the age of 21. I actually invested in Bitcoin in 2013 when one Bitcoin was around 200 Rand. I was still in university. I'd started a little business. I was still studying, wondering what I'm going to do afterwards. But it was through my engagement in investing in Bitcoin that one day the Bitcoin price moved from 200 Rand to 10,000 Rand. And I realized that, wow, I'd actually invested in something where I didn't do much, and the price jumped so quickly. And from then onwards, I became obsessive about understanding what is blockchain technology, how it actually works, what are cryptocurrencies and how they work. And from that day onwards, I started to invest, but not only invest, to study, understand, and engage this technology known as blockchain technology. I believe, and I know that a few people might disagree with me, especially the deputy chair of the commission, Professor Chirizi Marara, I believe that blockchain technology will be the leading technology in the fourth industrial revolution, but obviously he believes that it will be artificial intelligence. But part of the reason why I believe blockchain technology will be the leading technology is because when we look at where money has moved towards, or where money is moving towards, we realize that most of the billions that we see migrating from old technologies of the second industrial revolution are all moving to technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, except of course for Warren Buffett, who insists on keeping his money in gold. But everybody else and all the rest of the companies are sort of moving their money towards the digital revolution. And we even have a report by PwC saying that 84% of companies in the world are actively involved in blockchain technology. So I was able to invest in Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price, obviously, if any of you check, it currently hovers at around 180,000 Rand. So just by me buying 6 Bitcoin in 2013, automatically in this year, I become a millionaire. But obviously, I can't disclose the amount of Bitcoin that I bought at the time, but I'm now heavily invested and also heavily active within the cryptocurrency space. I do that on a daily basis, and I continue to engage this space and look for new technologies within the space, and obviously outside of the space that are involved in the fourth industrial revolution.
Impressive, very much impressive. Thank you very much, Mr. Dagada.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the BMF for this prestigious invitation, and thank you for engaging with such great minds and leading minds of the future of our country.
Yes, when the BMF, the Young Professional Student Chapter in the National Office, wishes you well in your future endeavors, and may you enjoy your upcoming meeting, and we will engage further on other avenues, okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chairperson. Thank you so much. Highly appreciated. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it has become quite important to reposition South Africa as a leading country on the fourth industrial revolution in Africa, and address all that is required to be ready for such an implementation. Clearly, when listening or after listening to Mr. Dagada, we cannot allow ourselves, or we cannot allow the situation where the next generation inherits a world that is becoming less and less habitable, and we do not want to stand by while our country struggles to adapt to a fast-paced changing world. Now, Mr. Mondendlovu, like I said and emphasized in my opening remarks, that when you talk to Mr. Mondendlovu, it's as if you're talking to the late Mr. Lottendlovu. Now, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to briefly go through his bio. Mr. Mondendlovu is the current head of advocacy and thought leadership at the Black Management Forum. He's also a trustee of the Maduke Lottendlovu Legacy Trust, a trust founded by the BMF. He is also a non-executive director of the PGA of South Africa and chairman of the Transformation Board Committee of the PGA. He also is one of the founding council members of the Transformation and Development Council of Gulf South Africa. He is passionate about leadership, development, and an advocate for thought leadership. Mr. Ndlovu holds a BBA degree in economics from UNISA, a postgraduate in management practice from Henley Business School, and currently an executive MBA candidate at Henley Business School. Mr. Ndlovu, it is now time for us attendees to draw wisdom from you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, colleagues. Good evening to the leadership of Limpopo. Thank you, Program Director, for your very kind remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Chair of Limpopo. He usually insists on some of these things, and he insisted that I be part of this event. I see there he's smiling there. So colleagues, you must blame him if I say something that does not resonate with your expectations. So please blame the Limpopo chair and take it up with him. But I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for having us. Indeed, the Black Management Forum continues to lead and continues to raise important issues that we should resonate on and find consensus and build consensus, which is critical to the creation of a critical mass of not only managers, but also critical mass of ownership at that level, which is also necessary in the economy. So colleagues, I'm going to discuss very briefly on the leadership front and share just a few points on my side that I feel are critical for youth leadership, young professional leadership to look at and to think about as they begin to engage, whether it's technological advances or changes in the leadership landscape, changes in the social landscape, changes in the psychosocial landscape and psychoeconomic landscape, whichever changes which they face. I believe that some of these principles will be necessary for the spaces which you find yourself in. And so, like I said, if it does not meet your expectations, you must blame the chair of Limpopo. But jokes aside, we are dealing with a number of issues in South Africa broadly, and as within the BMF and in the broader leadership landscape, we like to coin them as the triple challenges, triple challenges: PIU, poverty, inequality, and unemployment. This evening, I want to add another leg to the challenges that we are facing, and I'm adding the challenge of leadership. Leadership. No longer triple challenges, but 4 challenges that we are facing that we must dedicate time and resources to developing and eradicating and further enhancing so that we deal with the challenges that we have. But I'm raising the issue of leadership because it's becoming a critical issue that must be further delved into in order to advance on our way forward in shaping the kind of South Africa that we want. So I believe that leadership is everything, and that leadership is not in everything. There's a fundamental difference there. Because if you say leadership is in everything, just like when you prepare a dish, you would say there is avocado in the dish, there is a lettuce in the dish, there is tomato sauce in the dish, right? So in other words, the dish can exist without that ingredient which you are emphasizing, which is also in. And so if we then say leadership is in everything, it means we can move without it inside. So I'm arguing the contrary, that leadership is not in everything. I believe firmly that leadership is everything. So without leadership, we cannot move forward. Without leadership, we will cripple our own very existence. Without leadership being everything and being a topical issue more than everything else, that it enjoys priority in debating, without a clear view of leadership as everything, we may not arrive at the destination where we are going, because it needs leadership. Point number 2, there's a variety of leadership sins that are out there. I'm just going to name them just high level and not really discuss them. But the first issue that leadership is challenged by is ignorance. We've now noted, even with the presentation of Mr. Dagada, that he believes that we are behind. And when you look at all the commentators around the 4IR, generally speaking, you can get the sense that there is a level of not acknowledging that we don't know, and accepting that we don't know. But because there's a certain layer of leadership that believes they know, but they're proving to be ignorant. So that's one of the challenges that's there, is ignorance. So youth leadership, be careful of the issue of ignorance. Number two, short-sightedness, a myopic view, not having a long-term view on things. Number three, which is very critical, reductionism. In other words, the oversimplification of an issue to the point of distorting the issue. And we see it every now and then where we oversimplify something with the intention, sometimes unintentionally, to divert from the issue at hand. And we become reductionist when we do that and not accept what is being brought to the fore. Instead, people oversimplify it and divert the issue completely. The issue of abdication. We've seen the issue of abdication. We've seen the issue of cowardice. We've seen the issue of abuse. And we've also seen the issue of corruption. I want to pitch very shortly my input very quickly on two models. I want us to just briefly look at two models that I just want to push towards you to think about. I'm sure we've heard of the term vuga. And isiZulu city vuga, vuga. And out there, it's been used in line with the whole 4IR, with the advancements, that it is an acronym that shows us the kind of environment that we are in. So firstly, V, what they say out there, stands for volatility. V stands for volatility. U stands for uncertainty. So there is both volatility in the system and in the world, and also uncertainty in the system and in the world. C stands for complexity. So it's multi-layered challenges that bring about a complexity. When you try to fix one issue, then another problem is created. When you try to fix another issue, more problems are created. The complexity within the system. And A stands for ambiguous, the ambiguity of the system. Sometimes the ambiguity of messaging generally in leadership circles, both in business and in politics and in civil society. These challenges are there. There's a volatility, there's uncertainty, there's a complex environment, there is ambiguity. I want to flip vuga. I want to flip vuga the other way around, and I want to reposition it. V stands for vision. We clearly now are coming to a place where in the South African leadership landscape, there's been so many different kinds of policies, so many different kinds of visions that keep coming. We seem not to have a consistency about our vision for the future. Vision 2030, in my view, is most probably won't happen. It's only 10 years hence, and 10 years is a very short space of time. And so the youth leadership in our quarters needs to have a broader vision of what they would like to see, and also accept that they may not be the intended beneficiaries of that vision, which is very important in leadership. You may set out on a vision, but you may not be the intended beneficiary. Therefore, be self-sacrificial as you craft the vision. U stands for unity. Unity is profound. I believe that we suffer from a majority pandemic. We suffer from a majority pandemic, and this is what I mean. When you look at the Jewish community, you look at the minorities in South Africa, because they are a minority, they will always be united, because if they are not united, they will be extinguished in whatever environment they find themselves in. But we, on the other hand, as the majority in South Africa, we seem not to be able to leverage on the majority that we are. And so I'm challenging the youth leadership on the platform to begin to grapple with this issue of unity much more seriously and much more deeply than it has been in the past. We have so many Black lobby groups today, but what are they collectively doing? What can they collectively say today? This is what they envisage as a strong Black collective leadership for the future. Unity is very key. C stands for courage. The courage, we need the courage of our convictions as the youth leadership. The courage that sets the path out. The courage to be bold in our thinking. The courage also to respect those we differ with. The courage to protect those we differ with. The courage to separate the idea from the person. The courage to separate the idea from the institution. The courage to separate the institution from the country, so that when we are discussing issues, they may be contextualized the best way they can be, and it needs courage to discharge that kind of outlook. And A stands for adapting. We've got to learn how to adapt. And within even youth spaces, you are seeing a level of adaptability. But at the same time, you're also seeing a level of fear of young leadership fearing to venture out and testing themselves and beginning to shape new skills and competencies around adapting to the new environments which they find themselves in. The last model I want to just briefly approach my input is the 5 P's of leadership model. Number 1, leadership as a plan, a deliberate course of action, deliberate influence in order to execute the plan. But we cannot execute the plan if there is no broader vision that we all buy into. Number 2, leadership as a ploy. Leadership as a ploy. In other words, the ability to outwit. There's a thorn bush out there called the buffalo thorn. And if you run into it, it hooks you. You can't escape it. In other words, it forces you to retreat in order to re-examine and move forward. So leadership as a ploy suggests that we should not be afraid of being self-critical, whether it's the Black Management Forum, whether it's UPSIP, whether it's the Black Business Council, etc., etc. You can name all of these Black middle class organizations. The thorns that we find force us to retreat and to be self-critical and to check even the pace of our movement so that we don't get caught up in thorns, and review and renew ourselves. Number 3, leadership as a pattern. Very key. Values should be and ought to be central to leadership. Without good social values, we cannot have a good cadre of leadership and a critical mass of leadership at all levels. So in other words, there ought to be an alignment, an internal alignment and an external alignment of our values. We cannot be talking about BMF values, which briefly I'll say is Ubuntu, effectiveness, respect, creativity, etc. If we talk about those, but yet internally we are misaligned, we will never be able to bring about the kind of leadership that we need. There needs to be an internal alignment and an external alignment with the values, the core values of the BMF and the broader core values of the society that we live in. Number 4, leadership as a position. As much as you are keen to lead, you must also be as keen to follow. As much as you are keen to lead, you must be as keen to follow. In the BMF, there's a phrase, and it's been there for many, many years, that in the BMF, you are leading leaders. In the BMF, you lead leaders. And in so doing, leaders can be led. And they can only be led if they have an attitude that is keenly to follow other leaders. When it's your turn to lead, lead. When it's not your turn to lead, don't lead. Be as keen to lead as you are to follow. And the last point in this model, leadership as a perspective. Leadership as a perspective. There is this developing perspective in the BMF around cathedral thinking. And the cathedral thinking is basically meaning there is a church, and Bab Mafuna likes to speak about this every now and then, that is continuously being built around the 1800s or so. Until today, they are still not finishing it. So the point of cathedral thinking is that every brick that is laying must be purposeful. That you have a role to play in laying a brick. You don't have to aim for 10 bricks. You don't have to aim for 20 bricks. But in your tenure as leadership, whether it's in the BMF or it's in corporate, business, political circles, academia, you have a role to play. But applying cathedral thinking means one brick at a time. And this church is not being finished as we speak. Same thing with the purpose and the development of leadership. We'll always need to develop leadership, even long after we've created a critical mass, but it will be self-reproducing at that time, which means, therefore, that every brick must be purposeful when it is laid down. Last points. I challenge you as the leadership that you need to foster a culture of debate amongst your peers, amongst your quarters. Meet more regularly. Find reason to stick together, because Black Management Forum leaders are very different to those who are out there. Find an excuse to always stick together, and in so doing, foster the culture of debate. Maybe you also need a new leadership charter that you all will adhere to. There was a time in the BMF, in the history of the BMF, where when you wanted to renew your membership, you had to convince the leadership that they must renew your membership because you've done something. So they would ask, what have you done? What have you done for us to renew your membership? And this was a practice at some point. And I heard this story from former Deputy President and stalwart Mam Cecilia Kuzwayo at a BMF conference a few years ago, where she said there was an era where you had to convince the leadership why you must be retained as a member. So maybe you need to look at a leadership charter of some sort. Maybe we need to look at having leadership camps once a quarter, have leadership camps in developing the kind of leadership that we need. Maybe we need a national service for youth, which the Black Management Forum can drive, challenging the leadership to think around some of these matters. National leadership service for youth. Maybe we can get into an agreement at some stage with some of the universities to bring in some of the students to serve in the BMF, to serve with young professionals, to be of service, to learn the spirit of service. For through the spirit of service, we then qualify for leadership, which is key. Program Director, I'll stop there, my brother.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndlovu. Like I said, engaging with Mr. Ndlovu is as if you're engaging with Mr. Lotto Ndlovu. When you're speaking with so much confidence, Mr. Ndlovu, you remind me of the past president, Mr. Don Mkhwanazi, who is famously known as Brad Don. And Brad Don would always say that, well, I was not there, but you know his works, would never forget his works. He would say that taking meaningful decisions and action is very key to achieving whatever goals you set your mind on. And I could tell by the way you were speaking, and it was so impactful, your insight on the topic at hand, on leadership and young people in the country. You touch on a very important issue that we as young people can take and move on to the next people, and to ensure that at the end of whatever we're doing, we reach the pinnacle that we as a young nation plan to reach. Now, going on to our chatterbox, there's a few questions for you, Mr. Ndlovu. And I would like to start. I see Senior Councillor Advocate Shukwamane has also posed a question. And the question is, facing an exponential speed of change in technology, How can young leaders recognize adaptive challenges to their organizations and build resilience? Mr. Monde, if you could just answer that question, then I'll take 2 more questions. And depending on the time that we have left, that will guide us as to what to do next, sir. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, thank you. I can see the question here again, facing an exponential speed of change in technology, how can young leaders recognize adaptive challenges to their organizations and build resilience? I think what's foremost for me again on the key of exchanging and sharing ideas. So we can recognize the speed of change, not only in our personal space, but also recognize the speed of change when we are collectively looking at the issues. Because as much as there's a speed of change, but our lived reality is another dimension. So we need to find a way to marry the two. And I'm suggesting that in marrying the ability to scan the environment, even as a leader yourself, you need a place where you can bounce off those very same insights that you may see in your space as far as the movement of technology and sharing with the collective leadership. And that is why I'm stressing the issue of unity in actually ensuring that youth leadership deliberately organizes itself on a much more regular basis for the purpose of the question that has been asked, for them to decipher, to unpack as a collective unit on how best to address those issues, the changes that are out there as youth leadership. And of course, as I said, when you put one brick at a time, you cannot put all 20 bricks at a time. So the youth leadership cannot seek to solve all of the challenges that are facing young people out there, but must be able, as a unit, the power of the unit, be able to identify as they decipher what they will prioritize as the key issues and the challenges organizations find out there, and building resilience. So another issue of building resilience is not to be fearful of your own peers, because they will challenge you, not to be fearful to come out of your comfort zone and sharing your perspective, being forced in a space where there are other leaders. They used to call it umkhabulo, right? It still happens every now and then, but more structurally it needs to happen, and forcing, pushing one another to share perspectives and insights on how do you view some of these things and how best to prioritize these things. I shared this with some of the leadership in I think it was a Kuruleni student chapter, some of the guys, and they wanted to change quite a number of challenges they see in the environment. And I said to them, ladies and gents, my advice as you seek to move forward as a youth leadership collective, remember, you're not in these leadership positions forever. And secondly, you need to prioritize, because if you are going to find 5, 6, 7 challenges, you may never even accomplish one. But if you will be able to prioritize 1, 2, maximum 3 challenges, you might be able to conquer one in your leadership tenure, 1 or 2 in your leadership tenure. And I think that kind of thinking can help young people to look at what's happening out there and be able to prioritize in their leadership tenures, whether it's a student chapter level or young professionals level, what are we going to prioritize and stick to that. And even though there are other changes that happen within your term of leadership, by focusing on building your brick or putting your brick, you actually make sure that the next leaders don't suffer, because this brick is firmly put out there. And I think that's a perspective that we need to look at and begin to push. Don't try to change everything, but try to change something, one thing. And I think we'll be more effective.
Thank you very much. And Mr. the national chairperson of the young professionals, Mr. Klasuchopa, I note that you've got your hand up, but allow me, before I allow you to pose your question, just to move on the question posed by Mr. Upapama, where he says, Mr. Motsepe pledged 20 million rands to incentivize cohesion among lobby groups. Now, Mr. Ndlovu, what initiatives have emerged since then?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think we're all there to witness the pledge. So this is what I'm going to say, and very clearly as I can. For the mere fact that we are sitting here tonight, and we've raised some of these issues of deeper collaboration, and that specific question about that particular pledge is proving that there is no concerted effort for Black lobby groups to collectively work together to ensure that we do something as a collective. And I think it's a sad thing for me to say. I'm really just a drop in the ocean. So it's really a sad thing for me to say, and also see out there that what is actually happening to that pledge. And those who are dealing with that issue, I'm not dealing with that issue at all, but we need to ask the BMF board, we need to ask the BBC, and I think the YP in particular, we should bring up this matter specifically on that, because that pledge was in line with what is lacking broadly, besides collaboration, the issue of research and development, which Dr. Motsepe was actually talking about, that we need to collaborate and we'll make some money available for research and development, as the Black lobby groups. So this issue needs to come out sharply to say what has happened. So much time has passed. What is the core issue at play? Why can't we, as Black lobby groups, actually do something for the country? Because this is not personal. It's not our issue. It belongs to the future. So if we can't work together on an issue like that, then it's very scary as to what kind of direction we're going to. If you can't sit at the table and deal with an issue like that, and a pledge is coming outside of the formalities of the Black lobby groups, it's coming from a former leader of the BBC, Dr. Motsepe, and he's saying, let's work together. So I think the YP needs to check the issue and to suggest, can we have a status report on the issue? How far is this issue? Because what then will happen is everyone will move back into their silos and do their own thing. But in actual fact, we exist as a collective, because all of us as a collective are playing this role of ensuring that the economic progress of Black people broadly is not disturbed, is not reversed or become reversible, that the economic gains are deeply entrenched when we as a collective work together on clear directives and priorities. So I'm also challenging leadership. Let's engage the issue. Let's do some vertical discussions to say what has happened on this issue, because it really did excite a lot of people. People were waiting for it. We don't know what happened. I certainly do not have a progress or status report on that, but we need to engage it. So that's my view, Mr. Program Director.
Thank you, Mr. Monde. Your response is easily understood and comprehended by the layperson, and by layperson I mean the man riding in the Pangami bus. Now, National Chairperson, Mr. Hopa, I see you have your hand up. If you would just speak and pose your question, sir. Mr. Hopa?
Yes, thanks very much, and greetings, leadership, greetings, Monde, and Mpo as well in the absence, and the provincial chairperson of Limpopo, Look, man, I have agreed more on collaborations, basically for lobby and advocacy. We've been doing that much in the BMF for long. And I believe that it is more difficult today to find yourself as a young person in South Africa. Basically under this 25th dawn of democracy, and you still find that there are certain things that are not lubricated, especially into economic mainstream. So for business unit, I still think that it might be correct if young people, we need to unite, as Monde put it, and actually chant business formations. Perhaps it might be a correct thing that the BMF young professionals might have, that we should primarily enter and discuss into a closed session for ownership in relation to the means of production, especially from the young professionals' point of sight. What is it that we can do together? Because COVID has proved that many things. One of them is that Black formations or Black population doesn't have sufficient businesses that can sustain this country for long. We still rely more on white people. Click's store recently proved us otherwise as well, that you try to chant and close or condemn, mainly you don't have a place where you can buy as Black people. So it's still taking you back to cliques. So I'm more concerned about this entrepreneur thing, how it might be leveraged so that Black people can unite and actually, as young as we are, and actually bring something that will contest these white formations. Thank you, and thanks, Monde. You have done well, and I believe in addition to your engagement, we still need young people who have integrity, who are led by their morals and conscience, so that when something wrong is done, their ethical, deep conscious psychology is able to trick and assist them not to be more into corrupt activities or so. But thank you. I just wanted to greet you guys all, and I'm glad that we are managing to have these engagements as young people. Thank you. And Nicholas, take it back.
Thank you, Mr. Monde, in response.
Yeah, no. The chair has alluded to the key issues, and again, just to add there, or to emphasize that young people have the opportunity. The BMF, specifically, the young people in the BMF have got what it takes to chart the way forward, to ask these questions, to engage top leadership about some of these issues we're raising, and I'm sure you've got many others as well, and solutions as well, as to how better to develop and move towards, the critical mass that has been envisaged for over 4 decades within the BMF. So very key. Critical mass is very key. But the other issue, again, is the principle of the means must justify the end. And the chair is talking about that again, and as earlier I spoke about briefly about values, the core values. Without values driven by that, that principle of the means must justify the end, we cannot look at things the other way around, that doesn't matter how we get there. I know it can be a point of serious debate, but debate nonetheless. Some believe that doesn't matter how we get there, as long as we get there. But the BMF, in terms of its DNA, in terms of its approach, has always maintained that the means must justify the end. So if the end is good and wholesome, the means employed to get there must be as good, if not more good and wholesome and moral, as the chair has noted. So back to you, Program Director.
Thank you very much. Just before I make way for the last question by Dr. Mukumo, let me allow the Provincial Chairperson, Mr. Mutsei, to come in for a few seconds for recognition. Mr. Mutsei.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I think I'm going to reserve my question and give it to Dr. Denny Mukumo to be the one who's going to ask. But for now, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize our former chairperson, Mrs. Ng Ramaipati. is part of us. You are welcome, ma'am, for being part of us today. I see the leadership of the other branches are also here. I'm not going to mention them by name, but I can see their names here. That's all I wanted to say. Monday, you did well. I just wanted to say that in front of everybody. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and again, Mera Maipadi, Rela Mureji. Dr. Din, Dr. Mukuma, I noticed that you've got a hand. Your question will be the last question before we move to our vote of thanks. Doctor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Chairperson of the Young Professionals, and then all protocol observed to the leadership. My question will be quite brief, but it's a question that has been with us, especially in this generation that we're in. There's a lot of friction amongst the elderly and the younger generation. And we're seeing it in all platforms. We're seeing it in the business side, we're seeing it in the professional side, we're seeing it in the political arena as well. And there's contestation for space in governance. Now, the eventualities of what we're seeing is that you end up with the older people imposing their presence and capturing the young people. I don't want to use political organization as an example, but you see that a lot in political organizations. And in other organizations, you find that vulnerabilities of young people and young emerging leaders are exploited to capture in a way and to ensure that they either conform to the standards that the elderly have set, or else they are set aside. And that is the biggest problem that I think we're facing now as a country. I mean, if you would even look at, for example, government procurement, in the entire of Gauteng government, where less than 4% of it is made available for young businesses and women-led businesses. I mean, what does it say? We have a huge gap that we need to close, Mondi. And I wanted us, because to close such a big gap, you can't be diplomatic, you can't be soft about things. And a lot of time, it needs radical intervention. You know, the same as inequality, you can't address inequality with these soft touch approaches. So now, I'm putting that question to you to say, having had witnessed this frustration of young leaders in all these spheres, in the business sphere, in the political sphere, and even in the professional sphere, how do we then create a platform for young leaders in all these spheres to gather together? Because as we have seen, when we are divided, we fall. And it is not really the fact that we must fight for space, but we need to also find expression, or else you'll find young people with talent, but not having resources to nurture and exploit that talent for the use of the greater community. I thank you.
Just, Mr. Monde, before you respond, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to recognize the Deputy Chairperson of the Black Management Forum in the province, Mayor Thulamsindo Raputu, who is also joined us in this engagement. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Monde.
Thanks, thanks, Program Director. Yes, indeed, it's quite concerning, some of the challenges that we are facing. But I would like to use BMF as the spectacle, right, that we are using to look at and survey some of these things. So I think first of all, we have a platform that has been created right here, where we are actually engaging as young people. I'm also under 35 as well. Mpota Gada is also under 35. You've got the former national leader here, Nicholas. So we as a BMF, and we also see it across the country, by the way, and the work that has been done by the national YP and the different provinces, you can see that BMF is probably more advanced in creating the platforms for expression. They may not be as perfect as we want them to be, but they are there because here we are actually able to engage. So I think let's recognize that the BMF is actually able to harness its young people, because in the DNA of the BMF over 4 decades ago, young people, women, and values were the core of the organization in terms of its national structure. So it was the heartbeat of the organization, and hence the starting of student chapters, etc., because that's where you're going to get your leadership pipeline flowing into the organization. And because the organization has got national reach through that organization, this organization, you should be able then to channel young people in a particular direction. Then the BMF moved into recruitment and placing. They started a placement agency, which is obviously being resuscitated as we speak. So I'm saying in the BMF, using BMF as a prism to point out this issue of tension between old and young, right? Even our national president is relatively young. He's not even 40. So BMF has shown over many years that it has the ability to rejuvenate itself and to develop young leaders and force the creation of spaces for them. And then there was then YP came as a formal structure as well. It's fairly young, it's not that old as well, but it came as well because there was a need, and as again you stated. So there was that gap which was seen by young people. Then young people decided within the BMF that we need a structure of this kind within the organization. And today, the rest is history. There's YP presence all over the country. There's student chapter presence all over the country. Yes, it is not perfect, but it exists. So I'm encouraging the BMF to go and call other young leaders into the BMF fold, because the BMF has proven that it does develop young talent. And we've seen young talent over 20, 30 years ago moving into branch leadership, moving to provincial leadership, national leadership, etc., and moving into business leadership, academia, even political leadership. We've seen that movement. So we need to recognize that our organization as the BMF actually has given young people the space, has given them the time, but it has not been as perfect as we want it to be. But we must acknowledge that there's opportunity. We're here tonight. Even prior to this engagement, there's been other youthful engagements on Zoom, on Facebook, we've seen that have been organized. So there is a youthfulness about the BMF that is there. There is a presence of young people that is in the BMF that we must celebrate. They are here. We must utilize them, harness them, and begin to further give them space to express themselves. Bob Mafuna said this when he was asked at the BMF conference a few years ago, that a member stood up and was talking about state-owned enterprises, and the member was aggrieved about the state-owned enterprises. And he suggested to the stalwarts that, no, why don't BMF members take up these positions, and etc. And Bob Mafuna's response was very interesting and quite telling. And he said, in his view, the BMF is all about building capacity behind the scenes and pushing others to becoming the faces, pushing others to becoming the CEOs and the directors. But the uniqueness of the BMF lies within its ability to build leadership capacity. And if you go even further into the history of the BMF, how even the stalwarts themselves and many others were shaping young leaders. Because in the BMF, it's probably one of the few organizations where you can actually get in touch with a stalwart, a young person. And all of them love young people, by the way. All of them love young people. it is telling of the organization that it has leaders like that who are always talking about young people must take their space in the organization. Young people must lead. Don't throw us out there. You guys must take the stand. So it really is incumbent on us as young people here today and many others across the country that the BMF has been given. It has been built and shaped. What contribution are we going to make? And BMF can be an example of where there can be less tension between old and young leadership. There has been tension, yes. But has there been space created for young people? Yes. Has it been perfect? No. But can we better shape it? Yes. And so we should take those positives as we begin to shape and better mold the organization and have more presence. So call other young people into the BMF fold. Don't be afraid. BMF is the template that should be used for the development of Black leadership, for the sustaining of Black leadership that is out there. And we can measure the success of young people in the different eras. You can see where some of them went. When BMF had that recruitment agency, they placed all over, they antagonized, they advocated, they did sterling work. We too can do that. We cannot wait for top leaders, for they cannot see everything in the 360 view, but we also can see certain things. So therefore, we have the power. We've shown it. We are here today. We are there tomorrow. Others will come after us in the future. And every brick we are laying, we are making sure that we protect the heritage of the BMF, which is developing young leaders, which it has done, which it continues to do. And we must also take that baton and begin to push the line and prioritize the issues and use the BMF. That's what they did. They used the Black Management Forum to push for policy, to push for certain appointments out there, etc. I mean, you know, we all know this. So we too must use the organization, give the organization our ideas, sell ourselves to the purpose of the organization and drive those ideas through the organization. And don't be the person that says, I gave that idea. I gave that idea that they're now doing a few years later. No, it's not what we are called to do in the BMF. We are called to drive the cause of economic justice for Black people. And we have that ability and opportunity now that we should do that. In sharing the ideas, and the organization takes it at some point, you shouldn't stand on a hilltop and say, I did that. No, you are part of the collective. So call other young people into this fold, call them into the BMF and strengthen the BMF. And especially this age gap between 25 and 35, they're roaming around out there. They're looking for a new home. I'm arguing the BMF is that professional leadership home for all young Black emerging leaders and current leaders. BMF is that home. And I hope that my input tonight has been well taken. Thank you, program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monda. I now know that I said that was the last question. However, Mr. Marcus Mukumela becomes the exception. So just one more question, just a very quick question from Mr. Marcus. Mr. Marcus, Mr. Mukumela, just one quick question and then we move for closure, sir. Mr. Marcus? Mr. Mukumela? All right. Seemingly, the question is no more. Mr. Monde, thank you very much for your insightful knowledge that you've departed to us. And most importantly, thank you for the recommendations that you made tonight. You know, after every presentation, the question that's left in our head is now what? And you've answered that question by providing recommendations for us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, leadership.
Yes, colleagues, in the interest of time, I will not waste any more time and move immediately or directly to the vote of thanks, which will be presented by by Mr. Matsi David, who is leadership of the BMF in Polokwane. Mr. Matsi, for vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, leadership. I also don't want to waste much of the time. Knowledge has been shared, and I would like to appreciate the opportunity that has been provided to us by the provincial leadership as well as our national office. It is indeed a great pleasure to see us utilizing our own intellectual capital in terms of knowledge to share insight on some of these things that are very topical and they are very interesting at the times that we live in. I've came across an article written in the Gibbs, the Gordon Institute of Business Science, which they were arguing that the introduction of artificial intelligence will indeed lead to loss of jobs and as well as increase the gap in wage inequality. And their fundamental argument has been raised that it is because of our inadequate educational system, which is not informed by what is required in the corporate environment or the world in general. So I think we should also focus much in making sure that as we are about to go on, not necessarily about to, but then we are already in the midst of all these tremendous changes that we often view as challenges when we are supposed to be seeing them as opportunities, because in as much as we'd like to see it as a problem, to many of others, it has created a lot of opportunities. We must move into positivity, as we are known as an organization that will always try to emerge in the midst of difficulties. You note that the organization was established at the moment whereby it was a little bit impossible to can have an organization of such nature. You would often hear at times that you should choose your battles, but then I think it is unfortunate at our time that the battle has chosen us as young people. We must strive to ensure that we create opportunities, we become innovative, because time will come whereby you can't blame the government. The only problem that you'll have to put out there as honest as you can be is that I had failed to can be as innovative, as creative as I could be in the midst of all the challenges that we were presented with. With no further ado, I'd also like to give my words of appreciation to all the speakers that have shared their knowledge. I'd like to give my appreciation to our speakers, Mr. Mondendlofu, who shed some light and some very deep thoughts that left us answered and also surprised into some of these things that we didn't really think to that level of. And I also like to thank Mpodagada in absentia, and thank the provincial leadership, Paumutsei, and also thank the leadership of the young professionals, Mr. Nicholas Elgala, who has been facilitating the event today. And also to all the representatives of the BMF structures according to their branches and levels, and members of the organization, as well as the inspiring members or aspiring members of the organization. I wouldn't really want to waste much of your time. From my side, it is just words of appreciation. And but to everyone who has joined us today, I would like to thank you. And to all the questions that have been raised, I believe that clarity has been shared, and now everyone is cleared. The question now, which I think should be left with all of us, is that we must ensure that these conversations don't end here. We continue having these conversations in our WhatsApp groups, trying to enlighten each other more often on what we should do and try to be more focused on finding solutions to our problem. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matia. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of our engagement. And then in my closing remarks, allow me to just say that we now have been presented with an opportunity to learn from each other and how to harness the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution to be able to build a better South Africa and Africa. And this can only be achieved if we as a South Africa, or if we as South Africans can understand that the fourth industrial revolution is not a sector problem. It must be seen as part of a national discourse, a discourse that we take wholeheartedly as an obligation on our part. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for having joined us on this occasion. And I believe that going forward, we are heading for greener pastures on this particular topic. So thank you, and I now move for closure of this wonderful engagement. Have a good night. Thank you.